The rain came down like it had a vendetta against the earth, turning the desert road into a river of mud and regret. Thunder rolled across the Arizona sky, shaking the ground with every angry roar. In the middle of nowhere, where the highway met nothing but dust and memory, a small figure stood under a broken gas station awning. 9-year-old Maya Washington held her little brother close, her thin jacket doing nothing against the cold wind that came with the storm. 6-year-old Elijah pressed against her side, his Superman backpack soaked through, his teeth chattering. The gas station had been abandoned for years, its windows boarded up, its pumps rusted and silent. But it was all they had. Maya's eyes were red from crying, but she'd stopped hours ago. Crying didn't help. It didn't bring their grandmother back. It didn't make the social services people understand. It didn't stop them from running when they heard they were being split up and sent to different foster homes. She looked down at Elijah, who clutched a picture of their grandmother, the only family they'd ever known, the woman who raised them after their parents died in a car accident when Maya was 4, the woman who sang them to sleep every night and made the best peach cobbler in Phoenix, the woman who passed away 3 weeks ago, leaving them alone in a world that suddenly felt impossibly big and terrifyingly cold. "I'm hungry, Maya," Elijah whispered, his voice small and scared. "I know, baby, I know." She had half a granola bar left in her pocket and a few dollars she'd taken from the emergency jar. Not enough. Never enough. The storm was getting worse. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the empty highway. That's when she heard it. A sound that cut through the rain and thunder like a chainsaw through silence. The deep, powerful rumble of motorcycle engines. Maya's heart raced. She'd heard stories. Everyone had. Stories about bikers, about gangs, about danger on lonely roads. But as the cold seeped deeper into her bones and Elijah's shivering grew worse, she made a choice that fear couldn't stop. She stepped out from under the awning, pulling Elijah with her, and waved her arms at the approaching headlights. If you believe in the power of compassion, in the strength of community, and in second chances for those who need them most, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps stories of hope alive. The first motorcycle roared past, then the second. Maya's heart sank. But then the third bike slowed, and the one behind it, and suddenly the entire formation was pulling into the abandoned gas station, surrounding it like a fortress of chrome and leather. There were 15 of them. Big bikes, bigger men, leather vests with patches that told stories of brotherhood in the open road. The Hells Angels logo stood out even in the rain. These weren't the kind of people you approached lightly. These weren't the kind of people little girls were supposed to trust. But Maya was out of options. The lead rider dismounted, a massive man with a gray beard that reached his chest and arms covered in tattoos that disappeared under his wet leather. His name patch read, Hammer. He removed his helmet and looked at the 2 children standing in the pouring rain, and something in his expression shifted from surprise to concern. "What are you kids doing out here?" His voice was rough, like gravel, but not unkind. Maya's voice shook, but she forced the words out. "We need shelter, please." The silence that followed felt eternal. Rain hammered against the pavement. Thunder rolled. 15 pairs of eyes looked at 2 small children who had nowhere else to go. Hammer knelt down, making himself smaller, less intimidating. Water ran off his beard. "Where are your parents, sweetheart?" "Gone," Maya said simply. "Our grandma, too. They want to separate us. Send Elijah to Tucson and me to Flagstaff. We won't let them." Behind Hammer, another rider stepped forward. This one was leaner, with kind eyes and a scar across his cheek. His patch said, Doc. He'd been a medic in Vietnam long before these kids were born, before their parents were born. "We can't leave them here," Doc said quietly to Hammer. Hammer nodded slowly. He stood and turned to his crew. "We're not going anywhere tonight. Storm's too bad anyway. Shelter in place." Within minutes, the abandoned gas station transformed. The bikers had tarps and sleeping bags in their saddlebags. They broke open the old building's back room, which was surprisingly dry. Someone found dry wood from inside the building and started a fire in an old metal barrel. Another biker pulled out a camp stove. A rider named Tiny, who was anything but, produced hot dogs and beans from his pack. "Always prepare for anything," he said with a wink to Elijah, who managed a small smile. Maya watched in disbelief as these rough-looking men moved with surprising gentleness around them. One hung a tarp to block the wind. Another found dry clothes in his pack, a spare t-shirt that became a dress for Maya, and sweatpants that Elijah had to roll up 6 times. "Eat," Hammer said, handing them plates piled with food. "Then you're going to tell us the whole story." And she did. Between bites of the best hot dogs she'd ever tasted, Maya told them everything. About Grandma Rose, who raised them alone. About the social workers who came with sad smiles and firm rules. About the foster families in different cities. About running away because staying together was all that mattered. The bikers listened without interruption. Some stared into the fire. Others nodded slowly. These were men who understood loyalty, who knew what it meant to be part of a family that you chose rather than the one you were born into. When Maya finished, Hammer was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, which miraculously had signal, and made a call that would change everything. "Yeah, it's me," he said into the phone. "I need a favor, a big one." The night stretched on. The storm began to ease and the rain softened to a steady rhythm. Elijah fell asleep against Maya's shoulder, his Superman backpack serving as a pillow. One of the bikers, a man named Preacher, who actually was a retired minister, draped his leather jacket over the children like a blanket. "You did good, kid," Doc said to Maya. "Keeping your brother safe. That takes courage." "I was scared," Maya admitted. "Courage isn't not being scared," Doc replied. "It's doing what needs doing even when you're terrified. You've got more courage than most adults I know." As dawn broke, painting the desert sky in shades of pink and gold, 2 vehicles pulled up to the gas station. One was a social services van. The other was a pickup truck, driven by a woman in her 50s with warm brown skin and eyes that looked like they'd seen both heartbreak and hope. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she was a family court advocate Hammer had called. She'd been working cases for 30 years, fighting for kids who fell through the cracks. Maya tensed, pulling Elijah closer. "Easy," Hammer said gently. "She's one of the good ones, I promise." Patricia approached slowly, respectfully. She looked at the scene before her. 15 Hell's Angels bikers who'd sheltered 2 runaway children through a desert storm. She'd seen a lot in her career, but never this. "Maya, Elijah," she said softly. "My name is Patricia. I'm here to help, not to separate you. Can we talk?" What followed was a conversation that lasted 2 hours. Patricia sat on the ground with the children, the bikers forming a protective circle around them. She explained that there were options, that she would fight to keep them together, that she knew a foster family in Phoenix who specialized in sibling groups, that running away, while understandable, wasn't safe. "But what if they change their minds?" Maya asked, her voice breaking. "What if they take Elijah away?" Patricia looked the girl in the eye. "Then you call me, and you call Hammer, and we fight, together." Hammer stepped forward. "We're not going anywhere, kid. You need us, we're a phone call away. That's a promise. Hell's Angels don't break promises." The other bikers nodded. Doc added, "We take care of our own, and you too? You're ours now." 3 months later, Maya and Elijah stood in a small house in Phoenix. It wasn't the home they'd grown up in with Grandma Rose, but it was warm and safe. Their foster parents, the Johnsons, were patient and kind, and true to their word, the bikers checked in constantly. Every Saturday, like clockwork, motorcycles would rumble up to the house. The Johnsons, who initially were terrified, had grown to love the weekly visits. Hammer taught Elijah how to throw a football. Doc helped Maya with her math. Homework, his old combat medic precision somehow translating to algebra. Tiny brought board games. Preacher took them to church when they wanted to go. The bikers became uncles, unofficial guardians, a chosen family that Maya and Elijah had never expected, but desperately needed. 6 months after that night in the desert, Patricia called with news. She'd been working behind the scenes, pulling strings, filling out paperwork. The Johnsons had submitted their application. They wanted to adopt Maya and Elijah, both of them, together. The day the adoption was finalized, the courthouse parking lot looked like a bike rally. 15 Hell's Angels had shown up in full colors, standing as witnesses to a promise kept. They lined the courthouse steps as Maya and Elijah, now officially Maya and Elijah Johnson, walked out with their new parents. Hammer stepped forward and knelt down just like he had that rainy night. "Told you we don't break promises." Maya, who'd held it together through the whole proceeding, finally cried. But these were different tears. She wrapped her arms around Hammer's neck, and the big, tough biker hugged her back, his own eyes glistening. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for stopping." "Thank you for being brave enough to ask," Hammer replied. 1 year later, Maya stood in front of her fifth-grade class for a presentation on heroes. While other kids talked about superheroes and celebrities, Maya told a different story. She told them about a stormy night, about being scared and alone, about 15 men on motorcycles who could have driven past but didn't, about how the scariest-looking people turned out to be the kindest, about how family isn't always about blood, sometimes it's about who shows up when you need them most. Her teacher cried. Several students cried. But Maya smiled because she knew something they were just learning. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear leather and ride Harleys. The Hells Angels still visited every Saturday. Elijah was learning to ride a bicycle, with Tiny running behind him for support. Maya had started a journal, encouraged by Preacher, where she wrote about her feelings and dreams. The Johnsons had embraced this unconventional extended family, even hosting a massive barbecue each year to thank the club. On the 2-year anniversary of that night in the desert, the group returned to the abandoned gas station. It had been purchased by a local nonprofit and converted into a rest stop for travelers in trouble, with food, water, and emergency supplies always available. A plaque hung by the entrance, "In memory of Rose Washington and in honor of community, courage, and kindness. When you need shelter, knock, someone will answer." It had been funded entirely by the Hells Angels Club, with help from Patricia Chen's advocacy group and donations from people who'd heard the story. Maya and Elijah stood looking at their grandmother's name, holding hands. Hammer stood beside them, one massive hand on each small shoulder. "She'd be proud of you," he said quietly. "She'd be proud of all of us," Maya replied. As the sun set over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, the unlikely family stood together. 15 bikers, 2 kids, 2 adoptive parents, and 1 fierce advocate. They were proof that family is made in the moments that matter, in the choices to stay when you could leave, to help when you could ignore, to love when it would be easier not to. Before the screen fades, let this story remind you: never judge someone by their appearance. The person who looks the scariest might be the one with the biggest heart. If this story touched you, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps stories of hope alive. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there will remember that we all have the power to stop, to help, to be someone's hero. Tell us in the comments below. Have you ever been helped by an unlikely friend? Because sometimes the greatest rescues come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes all it takes is one small voice saying, "We need shelter, please," and one big heart saying yes to change the course of 2 lives forever. And remember, the next time you see someone in need, you have a choice. You can drive past, or you can be the one who stops. You can be the thunder that scares, or you can be the shelter from the storm.